Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Love and Relationships for the Modern Mystical Life. We are living in a time where the old way of being in relationship isn't really working anymore. If you look out into the people you know, you'll notice that there's a lot of people who are questioning relationships. People are leaving marriages, they are exploring union, and there is a deep curiosity about what love and relationship actually means. This is because, like anything and everything on this planet, we evolve. And so the scripts that we've inherited from our families and our culture and from every love story that we were ever told, they're not working anymore. But the new way hasn't quite been written yet. We're in this transition. And what we're tapping into as a culture is there's something much deeper going on in our relationships than what's just on the surface. There is a deep mystery that we can feel. And this is because our relationships are actually living, breathing entities, and they don't exist in isolation. They don't go away when you go home, when you turn off your Instagram feed, when you choose not to answer a text message. Your relationships are woven to everything and with everything you've inherited and everyone you've ever loved, including this invisible field that exists between us all. Love and relationships for the modern mystical life is where the practical and the soulful stop being separate conversations. I'm Juliana Christine, and this is where we start to find the new way to relationships, deeper, intimate, honest relationships together. For a long time, we've accepted disconnected sex, resentment, distance, gossip, and cutoff as normal. And we call that relationship. We hold things back and we leave things unsaid. And then what can happen when we do this is the relationships start to fall apart. And we believe we've done everything we could. This is because most of us don't know our relationships are built on unsteady ground until we're already in crisis mode. And where we're trying to save the relationship instead of creating a solid foundation from honesty and curiosity from the very beginning. And so if you've ever noticed yourself in a relationship pattern and you keep hitting the same wall again and again, you keep repeating the same thing again and again, it most likely doesn't have to do with who you're choosing or the person in front of you, and everything to do with what you weren't taught. Because we don't know what we don't know. Up until this point, we've known love and relationships to be what our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents taught us. And then you add in all the great novels and fairy tales, and then you add in TV, Netflix, everything that we consume on Instagram and TikTok. And all of these things are teaching us about what love should, could, would, has the potential to be. So we're learning from our parents, who most of them did their best, and their parents and our grandparents and great-grandparents, who also did their best. But what I've noticed is this thread that happens, and I see it out in the world, and I've experienced this throughout my life, which has really gotten me to start thinking about this deeply. We're just supposed to know somehow how to be in authentic, honest relationships. It's like we're just supposed to know how to do it because of what we were modeled to do. We spend so much time learning about math and finances and history and politics, but we don't really spend a lot of time learning the nuances of relationship when we're young. And what I've discovered is that if you want an authentic, intimate, honest relationship, it's going to be messy at some stage. So we're all kind of just finding our way through trying to speak this language of relationship that is authentic, honest, and intimate, but we weren't ever taught how to do it. So right now, if you look out into our culture, our TV world and our book world shows us a lot of drama. And drama is enticing to humans, right? Because it gives us heightened emotions. And heightened emotions can be addictive. This is why we like watching scary movies. We go on roller coasters. We want to have a big, grand wedding, or we want to go on this amazing trip. It's because we want to experience something new. And drama also gives us that similar feeling, this felt sense, this heightened emotion in the body. And some of the drama that I grew up watching, which you may have as well, was Friends, Grey's Anatomy, and Sex and the City. And honestly, I mean, I give Grey's a little bit more credit, but what they're showing us are genuinely fucked up versions of love. And we see them as normal. And the reason I say that they're messed up versions of love is because these TV shows show us all of the drama. And drama is a part of being human. It's a part of life, and stuff happens. But these shows have never taught us how to move through the messiness, how to really feel our way through the messiness. And this is the only way through to these honest, authentic, deep connections that we want, is to actually go into what feels messy. And in order to go into what feels messy, we have to come back into ourselves. We have to understand who we are in our individuality so that we can communicate and be real with the other. Because this is how the drama dissipates. This is how we make it through the heightened emotions, is we let people into our experience and we get really curious about another person's experience. So I'm a recovering people pleaser my entire life up until about 13, 15 years ago. My life was created, I experienced my life by being hyper aware of other people's needs. And I am still very good at knowing what other people need. It's part of why I'm good at mentoring women and men through different relationship dynamics. But what would happen before I realized that I was a people pleaser is that I had very little capacity to express myself. See, there was so much going on inside of me, and there still is, but I didn't know how to share it with another person. It was so scary for me to do this. I would get really uncomfortable. My throat would close, and I would just say, oh, it's good. Oh, never mind. Oh, it doesn't matter. And I would do this again and again. But what would start to happen is my relationships would start to feel really hard. I would feel really alone and misunderstood because I believed people didn't care about me. And so then resentment would start to build up inside of me. And I would slowly start to pull away from the people that I loved. And I'd start creating these beliefs and stories that they don't really love me, they don't really care about me. And I'd pretend even more, and I'd cover up those feelings even more, because then I'd start to feel guilty. It was really, really messy. And then because it became too much inside of me, I'd explode and I'd cut off from my friends, because it was really the only way I knew how to come back to myself, because I was so wrapped up in the other. I was so scared that if I didn't make this relationship work and focus on the other, that I would lose them. The paradox was that me not showing up was what had me actually pull away from the relationships, because I didn't know how to use my voice. I didn't know how to speak my needs. I thought my needs were inconvenient and needed to be kept a secret. But what I discovered is that in order to have the types of relationships that I wanted, which is and was and will always be intimate, authentic, and honest, I had to fully show up as myself, because no one actually knows what it's like to be you. No one actually knows what you need. And if you're like me, and you might resonate with the term people pleaser, and you're highly attuned to what other people need, you can, however, misinterpret that, because you are not them. And so this is why I say relationships have to get messy, and they will get messy. The best relationships that I am now so grateful and honored to be a part of have gotten to be this way because of the messiness, because I went in to what was going on. And part of that messiness that I had to do was some people that I cut off from, I chose to go back and repair once I learned what I'd done. I shared honestly what was going on for me, and I asked for forgiveness. And this was really scary, because this is what we're not shown, what we're not taught, how to be really, truly. We have to expose ourselves to the people who we love about what's actually happening inside. We need to ask for what we need and speak our needs. And this is really scary, because sometimes when we do this, that actually shows us that some relationships aren't meant for us. So when we start to show up as ourselves and get really curious, and we begin to be willing to see relationships as a place where mess does happen. Relationships, you'll hear me say this over and over and again, relationships are not perfect. They are a practice. And we need to find our way through and into deeper relationships together. We can't do relationship in isolation. And so when you begin to build a foundation within yourself, and then with the people that you love, that's when things get to change, because crisis doesn't need to take out the foundation. When there's tension in a relationship, this is actually the place where you can step into the relationship more deeply. It's the place where you can build deeper trust, a more solid foundation. However, you need to have spent this time building an internal knowing of who you are, so that you can show up internally for yourself and then externally in your relationships. And so that when you're showing up authentically externally in your relationships, you stop hiding. You're not dancing, you're not gossiping, you're not pretending. And that creates a solidity, a safety, and a trust. And when you begin to build this capacity of your own inner knowing, it's not about being the perfect person, the perfect best friend, the perfect mother, the perfect father, lover, wife, husband. It's not about that, because no one is perfect. It's about becoming so radically curious and compassionate about your own experience, and then being willing and brave enough to bring your experience into the room with someone else. So the question I often ask is, how can you get radically curious and compassionate while communicating honestly and responsibly with the people that you love? Because this is the skill that is learnable. This is what creates the foundation. This is what I believe is what's required to rewrite what relationships mean. That when we can show up in this way, we begin to create a new map for our children of what it means to be in friendships, about what it means to evolve in relationship, because you're changing every day. And that person that you married 20 years ago has changed every day for 20 years. But we kind of get stuck in these old patterns and loops of let's just pretend. And it's not conscious. It's an unconscious wiring that's been set in since we were children. And I'll go into that in a deeper episode, in another episode, about why that happens. But we just show up like we did when we were kids. Like we saw what was modeled to us by our parents, by our grandparents, by our TV shows. And so when we get radically curious, compassionate, and communicate honestly and responsibly with ourselves and the people that we love, we get to reshape our relationship map. We can learn together what relationship really means. And that's going to look different for you and another person, for you and another person. Like it looks different because each individual person is highly unique. And so your relationships will most likely be highly unique. So I'm really excited to explore this with you. This is a relationship between us. We're going to explore this together. Because as I shifted and leaned into these ways of being curious and compassionate and have honest communication, my relationships have all changed. They can all be really messy for sure, but they're safe. Even when I'm scared, they're safe and they're real and they're fun. And I feel deeply known and cared about, all because of the willingness to get messy. So one question to sit with this week is this. Is there a relationship in your life right now that is calling you or asking you to show up differently than how you normally do? But maybe you're not really sure how. Yet something's niggling at you that you need to say, or something that you're thinking about or feeling that you haven't quite shared yet. This is your entry point, your starting point. So just let yourself sit with that question, because this is how we start to shift the relationship dynamics between us and change how the whole world exists on a relational level. Thank you so much for being here with me. Thank you for listening. If you have a question or something you'd like to share, you can send me a voice message on SpeakPipe. The link to do this is in the description of the podcast, and I will answer your question in a future podcast episode. So please give me your thoughts or your ideas or your questions about relationships. I really want to hear them, and I will bring them back into the podcast. Have the most beautiful day.